On the first week of Daring Faith, we learned that God says you can learn a lot about faith by looking at three kinds of people. We look at the life of a successful athlete, a successful soldier, and a successful farmer. We covered that in pretty good detail in the past few weeks. Today, we're coming back to the farmer metaphor. And I know I'm teaching a group right now of young adults, and a lot of you have never grown into farming, have never really don't know what farming is. How many of you know what farming is? Okay, how many of you were farmers before? Okay, how many of you don't know what farming is? Okay, at least you have an idea of what farming is. Today we're coming back to this farmer metaphor because the Bible compares the Christian life to gardening over and over. Jesus used it in the New Testament. He used the Christian life and talks about gardening, talks about sowing, talks about planting. Now, on top of your outline, if you would pull out your outline this morning, in Genesis 8:22, would you follow me in that and read along with me? It says, as long as the earth endures, there will be what? There will be seed time and harvest time. These are laws of seed time, and there are laws of harvest time. For those of us who are familiar with the New Testament, Jesus talks a lot about this. He had parables about seed. Now, in Galatians 6:7, here's what Paul said, and would you read it with me, please? It says, don't be misled. No one makes a fool of God. Whatever a person plant, he might harvest. What did it say? He will. Would you circle that word, will? It says he will harvest. Today, I want to talk to you about daring to plant in faith. And specifically, I want to teach you God's laws of harvest. God's laws of planting and harvesting. Now, when you talk about sowing today, most people would think about the word sowing. When they think about the word sowing, they would think about needles and threads. But in the olden days, this is a very common statement for those of you who are farming. You literally know that there is sowing and reaping. But when modern machinery came back, people got away with sowing seeds and all that stuff. They do it mechanically now. And it was literally called broadcasting. Back in the days when you sowed a seed, it was called broadcasting. You carried a bunch of seed with you in a sack, and as you walk, you throw it out and you cast it out. Which is, by the way, where we get the term broadcasting on television and radio and things like that. Because you are sowing seeds on a wide distance. It's not just planting one seed at a time, but really sowing a lot of seeds. Now, here's what I like to let you know before we get started in this. If you ignore the laws of sowing and reaping, it will hurt your life. And many of us don't realize it's a biblical principle. It's a law of life. If you wisely use the laws of sowing and reaping in your life, you will experience success and you will experience blessing. Now, you can use these laws of sowing and reaping in relationship. You can use it in your health. You can use it in your finances. You can use it in a career. Learning how to plant wisely in your career and how to harvest wisely in your career. The point I want to make this morning is this. Whatever you need more in life, you need to plant in faith. I repeat, whatever you need more in life, you need to plant in faith. If you feel like you need more appreciation in life, you need to start appreciating others. Can I get a witness? One of the complaints I get a lot from parents like, I don't feel appreciated. My family doesn't appreciate it. My kids doesn't appreciate me. My question is this, do you appreciate them? Do you sow the seed of appreciation? If people will say, you know what, my family don't have time for me. My kids are always out. They don't have time for me. Let me ask you this. Did you sow a seed of time? Have you sown seed of spending time with those who are closest to you? See, whatever you need more, you need to learn the laws of planting and harvesting or sowing and reaping. So let's go to these laws real quick. If you would pull out your outline. Number one is this. Everything starts as a seed. Everybody say seed. On your way in here, everybody receive a kernel of corn. How many of you receive a kernel of corn? Raise your hands. If you did not receive, I will give you a kernel of corn. Anybody did not receive a kernel of corn? Okay, so everything starts as a seed. That's the law of the harvest. Everything starts as a seed. Now, every idea started as a seed. Every dream started as a dream seed. Every achievement, every nation, America started as an idea, a seed idea of life and liberty in the pursuit of happiness. This church started as a seed. By the way, if you don't know this, you're alive today because of the seed of your father implanted to your mother. Is that right? Right? So you started as a seed. Literally, when you look at all the living things in life, everything that's living on planet Earth came from a seed. And it didn't come from a seed that is not alive. It came from a seed that's alive. Now, everything starts as a seed. In Genesis 1, in your outline, it says this. Let's read together. God said, "Let the land have seed-bearing plants and trees that bear fruit with seed in it according to their varieties." Now, we're going to come back to that. What are we talking about when we're talking about planting a seed? What is the seed? And in your outline, it has this. A seed, let's read together. A seed is anything valuable that I give away. Think about that for a while. Process that. A seed is anything valuable that I give away. When I give away praise to others, there is value in that. Isn't that right? When I give advice, especially good advice, when I give time to others, when I give money, when I give out my experience, when I give out my talent, anytime I give something that belongs to me that is valuable, that, my friend, is a seed. Anytime you give anything, when you give away love, that is valuable to me. And that's a seed. A seed is anything that I give away in order, hear me out here, in order to help somebody. So it all starts with a seed. By the way, can I say this? How many of you know that words can be seed? Words can be seed. The words can be seed that you plant in people's mind. And that's why I always tell parents, be careful with the words that you say to your kids. Those are seed. Those are things that they will remember through life. If you tell your kids, "Oh, you're just not really as good as brother. You're very bad in math," that's a seed that you planted. If you say, "You're an awesome person. You are God unique. God has created you and I love you," that's a seed that you're planting. And they can grow and they would bear fruit. So you need to choose the words wisely, especially when you're talking with people you love. Can I get a witness? When you're talking to your wife, you're talking to your spouse. Let me ask you this question. What kind of seed are you planting in your relationships? Are you planting seeds of trust or are you planting seeds of distrust? Are you planting seeds of kindness? Or are you planting seeds of crankiness, of bitterness, of anger, of meanness? Are you planting seeds that build up people? Number 2, nothing happens until the seed is planted. Does that make sense? Nothing happens until the seed is planted. It must be given away. It must be thrown away. It cannot do any good if it is in the bag. Jesus used this principle to explain why he came to die. In 1 John 12:24, it says, read this with me. It says, Jesus said, "Unless a grain of wheat," what? "is buried in the ground, it cannot reproduce. But if it dies, it will produce much fruit." Now, Jesus was using that as an example about his life. But it's true also with a seed. The moment you put a seed in the ground, it has to sort of die to itself before life comes out. A year ago, I bought some pumpkin seeds. You know, I want to be gardener. I bought some pumpkin seeds and I planted it and it never sprouted. I didn't know it was a cured seed already. It was a dead seed. It's the pumpkin seed you eat. And someone told me, "No, you don't plant that kind of seed because that has been boiled, it has been salted. Pastor Phoebe, it doesn't work that way." And so you have to get the one that came out of the fruit. I didn't know that. Now imagine a farmer going to feed store, buying a sack of seed or some crop he's going to grow, and then he puts them in his barn, and then he's afraid to give it away. Can you imagine that? He's thinking, I'm going to hold on to it. I'm not going to have enough, so I'm going to keep this. You would say he's foolish. Isn't that right? You would think this farmer is foolish because seeds are meant to be planted. See, planting and sowing, folks, is an act of faith. It's an act of faith because it's saying, I want to plant this seed. I believe that something great is going to come out and happen because of this seed. Something great will happen because I'm going to give it away, and I've got to just plant it. See, planting seed is also risky. Isn't that right? Because you cannot see what's happening underneath the ground. I remember when my dad was teaching me about planting, and he likes, when he goes to people's house and say, oh, Phoebe, their apple is so sweet. I'm going to get the seed and I'm going to plant it. And so he plants it, and then he goes, you have to wait, don't dig it. But I get so impatient, I dig the seed, and it's not growing. And my dad said, why did you dig it? It has to stay there. You have to trust it. It's a principle. You have to deep it there, and it has to die, and it has to grow. You see, when you plant a seed, it's covered up, and it's buried, and you really do not know what goes on in there. Isn't that right? Science tells us the process, but you really cannot see it. Is that thing going to sprout or not? Is that thing going to have leaves? That's where faith comes in, because you cannot see it. What if it doesn't sprout? You're tempted to dig it out. What if it fails? What if I give seed away and nothing comes up? Then I'm a creek without a paddle. That's where faith comes in. Now, Jesus said in Mark 4, pull out your outline. It says, the kingdom of God is like someone who plants seed where? In the ground, night and day, whether the person is asleep or awake, the seed still what? The seed still grows, but the person does not know how it grows. Isn't that right? Does that make sense? Yes. Does that make sense? He cannot see it until it sprouts. And that's the element of faith. You have to trust the seed you planted there. Number 3, when I have a need, I should plant a seed. Can I get a witness? When I have a need, I should plant a seed. When a farmer looks at a barren land or a barren crop, a barren field, and he sees no crop in the field, he doesn't gripe. He doesn't get depressed. He doesn't complain. He doesn't pray and say, God, would something grow in my field? No, he doesn't. What does he do? All he had to do is just start sowing and start planting. One of the things when I was reviewing this, what God reminded me is this. There are sometimes, there are things in my life that I should stop praying about, and I should just stop planting and sowing. Could it be possible that we're praying and saying, God, would you please change my wife? God, change my wife. And God says, no, I want you to change first. I want you to plant the seed first, then it will grow in her life. Or we're saying, God, would you please change my husband? Would you please make him romantic to me? And God says, no, I want it to start with you. Someone said, well, no, I don't want it to start with me because that means I'm feeding you. He has to start. Well, God says the principle of sowing and reaping, whatever you give, you will receive in return. Number 3, are you still awake? Yes. All right. Number 3, when I have a need, I should what? I should plant a seed. Like what I said, when a farmer look at this barren land, he doesn't pray, he just plant the seed. Oh, we were in number 3, right? I'm just checking. So he just start planting because no sowing, no harvest. Now, the Bible says in Ecclesiastes 11, let's read it together. Do your planting in the morning, in the evening too. You never know whether it will grow well or whether one planting will do better than the others. And basically, you've heard us saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Yeah, that's an investor's principle. By the way, that idea came from the Bible in the book of Ecclesiastes. But here's another example. He's saying, when you sow a bunch in many areas. Plant in different areas. Do your planting all the time. Don't just plant one day because that's all you're going to do. You're going to get. You should be planting good seeds all the time with your life because you never know where it's going to grow. Let me be real honest with you. Some of you think You're waiting on God. God, I'm waiting for you. And you are not. You know what? He is waiting on you. Some of you think you're waiting on God for a job. You're waiting on God for a miracle or a spouse or your hero or your princess or something you want. And really, God is waiting on you. He's waiting on you to start planting the seeds. You see, when I have a need, I plant the seed. And if you don't make the deposit, there is no return. Does that make sense? Does it make sense? Number 4. Tell the person sitting next to you, number 4. Number 4, whatever I plant is what I will reap. Whatever I plant is what I will reap. This is what we call the law of reproduction. Whatever I plant is whatever I will reap. Now that sounds like, wow, but that's kind of scary too. Isn't that right? Because this is an inviolable rule of the universe. It'll either work for you or it will work against you. He doesn't wonder about what's going to grow. He doesn't doubt what's going to grow. If I plant a corn kernel in the ground, I will harvest a corn, right? If a farmer plants beans in his field, what would he get? If he plants watermelon, what would he get? Watermelon. Just as plain as that. You don't go out and plant watermelon and expect an apple to come out there. No. It's just not right. And like what I said, this is an inviolable rule of the universe. If I plant corn, I will gain corn. Here's what Galatians, Paul said. Let's read together aloud. It said there, you will reap exactly. Oh, come on now. There's more adults here. Let's read together loud enough that the person backing you will hear it. 1, 2, 3. Now, there's a phrase in Genesis over and over repeated that shows. It's the phrase, after its own kind. That's a phrase, that phrase is talking about here. We always reap the same thing we sow. Again, this works both ways. This can work for you and it can work against you. Whatever I dish out is what I get back in life. Whatever I input is what's going to come out. And there's many scriptures in the Bible. I don't have time to go over them. But when you go home, look at that principle of sowing and reaping and Google it. Job 8:4-8 says, people who plant trouble, harvest trouble. People whoever sows sin will reap weeds. Those who plant seed of injustice will harvest disaster. Think about that. Now let me show you some positive examples. In Proverbs 11:18 it says here, the one who sows righteousness will reap sure reward of righteousness. In Hosea 10:12 it says, plant good seeds of righteousness and you will harvest a crop of much love. Wow. James 3:18 says, peacemakers plant seed of peace and reaps harvest of goodness. Are you getting the idea of this? This is not a minor passage. This is not a minor teaching. The laws of the harvest. You will reap what you sow with your children, with your wife, with your business. It'll either work for you or against you. If you sow anger, that's what you're going to get with your kids. If you sow patience, that's what you're going to get. Patient kids. You will reap what you sow and you get exactly what you put out. I cannot sow irresponsibility and reap success. Impossible. I cannot sow laziness and reap reward. The Bible is full of this example, both negative and positive. Jacob, do you know what his name means? He's a deceiver. He deceived his father. He deceived his brother. And guess what? His father-in-law deceived him in return. How about Haman was a man who reaped bitterness. He built this gallows to kill Mordecai, the Jews, and guess what? He ended up being hanged in the gallows that he built. Galatians 6:7-8, I love this in the Message version. It says here, let's read together. The person who plants selfishness, ignoring the needs of others, and ignoring God, harvests everything Starts with a seed. Nothing happens until the seed gets planted. Whenever I have a seed, whenever I need to have a need, I have to plant a seed. And whatever I plant is what I'm going to reap. Number 5. Here's a big one. I am not the only sower. I am not the only sower. You're not the only sower in the universe. Other people are planting around you. And by the way, you are reaping both good and bad from those who went before you. I am sad to say, and sadly, I'm sorry for this, but some of you grew up in families with a history of abuse, history of alcoholism, history of divorce. And you have to decide to break the chain now. Can I get a witness? Some people said, oh, Pastor, we have Celebrate Recovery here. And some people will say, well, my father's an alcoholic. My dad's an alcoholic. Everyone in my family is an alcoholic. So I guess that's where I'm bound. I'm an alcoholic today. Well, I'd like to let you know, your parents has sowed that in you. Your grandparents has sowed that in you. But in Jesus Christ, we can always have new life. It's not religion, my friend. It's Jesus Christ. You are harvesting both the good and the bad from your past because you are not the only person who is sowing. Everything you do has consequences. And that's one of the things I always tell young adults. Make sure, honey, everything you do has consequences. You might do it behind closed doors, but eventually the memory and the guilt is going to tear you down. And by the way, your life is going to affect future generations. Hear me out here. You think you're not important? You think you're just a worker? Everything you do in life affects future generation. If you were a parent right now, believe me, your actions, your choices, the way you treat each other, husband and wife, affects your children. So you need to take it very, very seriously. I am to reaping the benefit and the blessing, basically, from my parents and my grandparents who had prayed and prayed for their grandchildren and their children. I am reaping that in my life because I had some parent in my life. I have a parent in my life. I have grandparents who love God and were praying for their future generation. I know many of you would say, well, I didn't have a family like that, Pastor Phoebe. I'd like to have a legacy like that, but I wasn't born that way. Here's my word to you. You start it. Start that generation. Start that legacy. Do me a favor. Turn to the person sitting next to you and say, start that legacy. Start it with your family name. You determine that the future generation of your family name are going to be blessed. I am not going to let my kids grow up with negativity. I am not going to let my kids grow up in alcoholism. You make that choice and you break the curse. Because you're going to plant seeds of prayer and love and godliness and generosity and faith and all these other things. And the people who come out of your family tree have blessing in heritage because you broke the cycle. You are not the only sower. Notice what Jesus said in John 4:38. He said, I sent you to reap where you did not what? Where you didn't plant. Others had already done the work before you, and you will gather the what? The harvest. There are people in this church who are investing their life. You are sitting, before I know that Jim, we thank God, we had old friends who had come and visit with us way back. And back in the days, there were pews, red pews. And the pews is like a seesaw. You sit on one side, it goes up on the other side. But there are people who invested, who had given their life. And we say, Pastor Phoebe, let's buy chairs. And I'll buy 10 chairs, I'll buy 20 chairs. And they've invested. And today we reap the harvest of their investment in our life. We're all reaping the benefit of someone else's sacrifice. We are here today because there are people who fought in war trying to keep this country safe and free, and they gave their life. And we're enjoying that today. That is living a legacy. That is living a heritage. Let me ask you this. What kind of legacy are you leaving this generation? You say, well, I don't have any kids, Pastor Phoebe. Oh, what about the people that are involved in your life? What about your coworker? What about your nieces and nephew? I am not the only one sowing. Number 6. Say number 6. Oh, come on, you guys. Number 6. I'm only letting you say something so that you don't fall asleep. Number 6, I always reap in a different season than I saw. I always reap in a different season than I saw. Does that make sense? You don't plant avocado today and go out tomorrow. There's fruits unless you get it in Home Depot. Right? To me, that was one of the biggest fascination I have in America. We never had that in the Philippines. My dad always planted from a seed. And so when we came here, we went to one of the houses for Bible study on a Friday night, and the backyard was bare. The following Friday night, he had all kinds of fruit trees. And I said, where did this come from? This is amazing. Was I blind last Friday? He says, no, Phoebe, we bought that in the nursery. It already has fruits. And you don't have to wait. And let me give you an insight to that. I thought about it. That's probably why Americans are very impatient. We want something instantly. We have microwave, instant coffee, instant divorce, everything instant. Instant tree. Like in the Philippines, you don't buy things instantly. Isn't that right? You have to start with a seed. Now, and so we somehow this concept of waiting in a different season to sow, to reap and sow is something a little bit hard for us to grasp, especially in this culture where we're taught to just, you say it, you can have it. You want it, just charge it. You can get it. You can buy it, just like that. Now, plants take time to grow. There is no instant maturity. So you don't plant today, this afternoon, and get a fruit tomorrow. No, at least by nature way. It's impossible. That's true when you plant anything in life. There's no such thing as instant success. There is instant fame, but there is no instant success. It takes time to gather wisdom. Isn't that right? Here's what the book of Ecclesiastes says. There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under where? Under heaven. A time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to scatter and a time to gather. In other words, there is a time to sow and a time to reap. Fruit ripens, hear me out here, fruit ripens gradually. And by the way, here's what I also find out. Fruits ripen at different times. Even though there's fruit, one fruit ripens faster than the other. I don't know why. It's nature again. I always reap in a different season than I sow. When I have premarital sessions with couples, they would come to me, and usually they've gone through other counseling, and they would tell me, Pastor Phoebe, oh my gosh, we're still in the same problem. We already went to 3 different counseling and all these things, and nothing has changed in our life. We've done so much counseling, we put in so much hours, put in so much dollars, and nothing has changed. And I would ask him, how many times did you go to counseling? Oh, maybe 3 or 4 times. How many months was that? Oh, maybe 3 months. Within 3 months, we went 4 times. I said, so how many years had you been married? Oh, maybe 35 years. How many years have you had this problem? 35 years. And I would say, do you think it's going to get over in 3 months? Absolutely not. Isn't that right? Isn't that right? Hear me out here, couples. There are no magic potion to conflict. It takes time. And maybe possibly you need to start sowing kindness and goodness in the relationship so that in time you can get that. Someone said, Pastor Phoebe, I was so nice to him for 1 month and he didn't change. I said, why don't you try being nice for 1 year? What? I'm going to die in 1 year. I said, you just started sowing. You haven't even waited. You haven't even watered. You have to wait and wait and wait. And you know what? That's where the problem is in our generation. We simply do not want to wait. But the principle of life is this. There's always time to reap, and it's going to take time sow, and it takes time before you reap. Number 7, I must be patient and not give up. How many of you have the pink outline? Raise your hands. Okay. How many of you have the white outline? Okay, maybe okay. We have yes. You don't know this. I'll just say the pink outline are for old people because they don't put in the answer. They just read. I provided that for the senior adults because they have a hard time writing. The white paper is for the young, right? Because the young likes to take notes. But that's okay. We forgive you. If this is your first time here at People's, you're forgiven. Next time you come, you have to get the answer. You have to get the outline without the answer, right? Is that okay? Is that okay? That's okay. Okay. So here's the principle. I must be patient and not give up. As you're waiting on the seed you planted, don't become impatient. I must be patient because you reap in a season that's different than when you sow it. Look at what Galatians 6:9 tells us. Let's read together. Let us not get tired of doing what is right, for after a while we will what? We will reap a harvest of blessing if. Would you please circle the word if and the word will? If we don't get discouraged and give up, we have to be patient. Tell the person sitting next to you, be patient. Okay, I'll say that later. Never mind. Number 8, this is a big one. I always reap more than I sow. I always reap more than I sow. I will always reap more than I sow. This can work for you and it can work against you. I will always reap more than I sow. And this is what we call the law of multiplication. That kernel of corn. Do you have the kernel of corn? Can you hold it up, please? Hold up the kernel of corn. If you didn't have the kernel of corn, did you eat it? That's not cooked yet, right? Okay, so this one kernel of corn, guess what? This one kernel of corn produces thousands and thousands of kernel in one cob. Isn't that right? Isn't that right? You know, in the first session when I did that, the people went, wow! I'm like, you didn't know that? Right? One kernel of corn that you produce, that you planted, produces thousands of kernel in this one cob. And in one kernel, there's hundreds of cobs that can shoot out. Isn't that right? You will always reap more than you sow. One little seed doesn't only give you one seed, folks. One little seed will give me back thousands of seed. Think about one apple seed that you plant. It produces thousands of apples, and when you break that apples, inside that apples is basically hundreds and hundreds of seed. This, my friend, is what we call the law of multiplication. In the parable of the soil, Jesus said it this way in Mark 4:8. He said, some seed fell on good soil. It came up and grew and produced a crop, multiplying how many times? 30, 60, and even what? 100 times. Again, I'll say this. This can work for you and this can work against you. The point is this. It really depends on the kind of seed you are planting. If you plant seed of anger, you're going to get anger back. If you're planting a seed of gossip, you're going to get a lot more gossip about you. If you plant seeds of criticism, you're going to get more criticism about you. There is an exponential potential in every seed you plant. As the old line says, the old cliche says, anybody can count the seed in an apple, but only God can count the apples in a seed. I will always reap more than I sow. Principle number 9. I increase my harvest by planting what? By planting more seed, I can always increase my harvest by planting more seeds. This is what we call as the law of proportion, that we always reap in proportion to what we sow. Is that a biblical principle? Here's what Paul said in 2 Corinthians 9, 6, 7. He said, remember this, whoever sows sparingly will what? Will reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will what? Reap generously. Each one should give what he has decided in his heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. What that verse says is this: you basically get to choose what you harvest in life. You get to choose how big the harvest is going to be in your life. You get to choose how much God blesses you in your life. And don't blame anybody else. Don't say, why is my brother better than me? Oh, maybe he's planted more than you did. You get to choose how much God blesses you in your life. You sow. The principle there is you sow sparingly, you will reap sparingly. And you sow generously, you will reap generously. Folks, that's God's word speaking here. And can I put a disclaimer here? Sometimes when we think about that verse, sometimes, I'm sorry, pastors always sometimes refer to money giving. How many of you know, just a reminder, how many of you know that God doesn't need your money? He owns everything in this world. And what I'm saying there is maybe you need to give in your time, your quiet time with God. Maybe it's giving your service to others. Maybe it's giving more of your time to your family, giving time to those that matters most in your life. Maybe it's just being still before God. You see, the law of generosity works. Hear me out here. And this is what fascinates me. The law of generosity works for anybody. Everybody say anybody. Anybody who follows it. Both believers and unbelievers. What do we mean by unbelievers? Those who are not really believing in God. And that's why it always fascinates me, like this great philanthropist, like, my gosh, they're getting richer and richer and richer. And then when you look behind their story, man, the massive amount of finances and support that they give out for charity. And it is a principle that works for everybody. That's like the law of gravity. It works for believers and works for unbelievers. It's just a law of the universe. Notice what Proverbs 11:24 says. The world of the generous gets what? Larger and larger, and the world of the stingy gets smaller and smaller. Are you stingy with your talent? Are you stingy with your time? Are you stingy with your love? That's probably why you are where you are in right now. Number 10, the 10th law of the harvest. The more seeds I plant, the more God will give me. The more seeds I plant, this is amazing. The more seed I plant, the more God will give me. Hello. The more seed I plant, the more God will give me, right? You know basically what it's saying here? God is looking for givers to bless. I repeat, God looks down and said, man, this world is a mess. There are homeless, there are orphans, there are widows in the street, there are broken lives, and he's looking down, looking for people to bless so that they can bless others. He's always looking for people to use, and he blesses people who are generous. Notice what Paul said in 2 Corinthians 9:10. For God who supplies seeds to the farmer and bread to it will give you what? Will give you more and more seed to plant and will make it grow so that you can give away more and more fruit from your harvest. Now notice the principle there. I'd like for you to circle the phrase so that you can give away more and more. Circle that. Because we have this mentality, and I would be, Pastor Fee, would you please pray that God bless me? Pray that God bless me. And I'm thinking, okay, why should God bless you? Think about that. And here we see here that God is really looking for people to bless so that we in turn can bless others. That verse is a promise about being generous with what God has given me. What did God give you? God has given you time. God has given you talent. God has given you wisdom. God has given you experience. God has given you finances. God has given you so many things in life. The question is this: what are you doing about it? Number 11, the 11th law of harvesting. Are you there? I plant by faith. Let's read it together again. Ready, go. I plant by faith and not by feelings. Now that's a very important point. People aren't generous because they don't feel like being generous. So they go by their feelings. You plant by faith, not by feelings. When a farmer gets up in the morning and he looks at his field and he's thinking, man, I gotta plant, but you know what? I don't feel like it. He doesn't do that. He realized that he has a work to do, and whether he feels it or not, he goes out there and starts sowing the seeds, right? It's just hard work. If a farmer only worked his crop when he felt like it, the world would starve. Have you ever thought about that? He doesn't want to get up early. Oh, it's the Pacquiao game. I guess I'm not sowing today. I want to watch the game. Or, well, you know what? I just don't feel like doing this today. I'm not going to do it. No, he does it whether he feels it or not. You don't go by your feelings. You go by faith. Let me ask you this. How many of you work 5 days a week? Raise your hands. Okay. How many of you go to work whether you feel like it or not? Those of you who didn't raise your hands, man, you got a good life, right? Because you know this, once you commit to a job, you don't go in there and say, well, you know, boss, I'm sorry, I don't feel like working today. It's kind of cold, so I just feel like staying under the sheets. Your boss is going to say, honey, I showed up here. You better show up here or else you are. We all know the line. But we all do it regardless of what we feel. Let me give you a little confession. Confession is good for the soul. I don't always feel like being nice to people. I hate to admit that. But that's the truth. Sometimes I'm just so tired. I don't always feel like being nice to people. Sometimes I want to be cranky. Sometimes I want to just say, leave me alone. Sometimes I just want to say, oh, you know what? Just give me my space. I don't feel like being kind. I don't feel like being generous. I don't feel like I'm ready to listen to your story today. Please leave me alone. Here's another confession I need to make. Sometimes I don't always feel like being nice to Max. And someone said, oh, you guys are the best couple. That's what you see. You don't see us behind closed doors, right? I have to say this. I thank God today I've been married to Max for 34 years. Happily married today. And you know what? It's the same. It was raining. I looked at him and go, oh, it was raining just like our wedding day. It was raining. November 27, 34 years. And I have to be honest, he's more patient than I am. He's more loving than I am. He sows the seed, and I respond to him because of what he's sown. But here's what he tells me sometimes. He would tell me, Phoebe, I don't know how you do it. I know you're tired. I know you've reached your limit, and yet you still have time to talk to people and be nice and be patient and be courteous. And man, when I look at you, man, you're all godly out there, and you just I can't believe that you could do that. And I said, you know what, Max? Because I move ahead in faith in spite of what I feel. If I feel like shooting down people, oh, I don't want to talk to you right now. I'm sorry. I don't want to meet with you. I could do that. If I only followed my feelings, I could go there. But I have chosen to not work with my feelings and really step out in faith. And many of you need to hear that this morning, because even in your relationship, you're very moody. I don't feel like feeding you today. I don't feel like cooking for you today. Well, whether you feel it or not, you have to cook, right? Or at least you can say, honey, I didn't feel like cooking today. I'll take you to McDonald's. And what I'm saying here, I plant by faith, not by feelings. Have you seen people who are feelers? Everything that they do is based on their feelings. You never know. You come to their house and then one day they're like, oh, how are you? And then the following day they're like, don't come near me. I don't like to see you. They're like bipolars, right? You never know how to address them. And it's very, very scary. Here's the thought I'd like for you to remember, if I can encourage you for the rest of the year. You plant not by feelings, but plant in faith. Whether you feel it or not. You know, sometimes people come to you and you know, like, gosh, I don't feel like giving this person anything. Give anyways. Gosh, I don't feel like being nice to this person. I'm tired. I'm distracted. I'm stressed out. I am in deep, deep grief right now. I'm so disappointed. I don't want to do that. Oh, I encourage you to move in faith rather than feeling, because you know what? Notice what Psalms 125 says. And sometimes I feel this way. Those who plant in tears will harvest with what? With shouts of what? Shouts of joy. They weep as they go to plant their seeds, but they sing as they return. They sing as they return with a harvest. Wow. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy. I remember back in the days, and please allow me to share this. It's my story. You want to hear my story? I used to teach Bible study in Mira Mesa. There's about 82 young people in a house. And I would pick up the kids from down south and bring them up north in Mira Mesa to meet up with the kids up north. And I would drive the van, and I was pregnant with Jared. I was probably 7, 8, 9 months. You know, I did this through my pregnancy. And there'll be times when it's raining and it's storming, and people would call me and say, you know what, maybe you shouldn't go to Bible study. But then the kids would call me, what time are you going to pick me up, Pastor Phoebe? Oh, Sister Phoebe at the time. Sister Phoebe, what time are you? Okay, I'll be there. And I remember there'll be times I'll be driving that van and I'll be in tears. I'm, God, this is so hard. And I would pick up the kids down south and bring them up north. And then I'd drop them off up on Gemini. They call it the Gemini pad. And then I would go pick up the kids from Rancho Bernardo all the way up to Poway and bring them back there. So by the time I come back here, it'll be probably 12:30 in the morning. And I remember driving home, and I would cry, and I'm saying, God, my gosh, this is so hard. It's so difficult. Now, I have youth workers that comes with me back in the days who would drive there, but I was the van driver because I was the only one insured to drive the van. So I would drive. And I remember, you know, for a while I would be sad going there. But coming back, when I would go back and bring the kids back home, I would like, wow, this is amazing. God, thank you for letting me do. And I did that for a good maybe 5, 6 years. And so after a while, I remember one time someone was asking, so what do you think happened to those kids, Pastor Phoebe? 82 of those young adults. And you don't know, but this is the Crips and the Blood. The Crips from here, the Bloods from here. I would drive them there. And so in the Bible study, I have the Crips and the Blood, gangster, all there, right? So I would say, what do you think happened to all those kids? And I said, you know, I really don't know, but one thing I know is I planted something. One day I was walking in Westfield Shopping Mall in Escondido, and I was, you know, shopping there. It's not my turf, but I decided to go there one day. It was a Christmas holiday, so I wanted to see the Christmas store there. And I went there, and while I was walking, someone said, Pastor Phoebe, Sister Phoebe, Sister Phoebe. And I looked back, and I saw this guy. I still remember him in Bible study, sitting in the corner. And he said, Sister Phoebe, thank you so much for not giving up on us. He was part of the Crips. Thank you so much for not giving up, for, you know, teaching us Bible study at that time. He said, I just want to let you know, I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to visit you just to let you know, I live in Arizona right now and I am a youth pastor. And I remember breaking down in tears. And he said, don't cry, you should be happy. No, I said, these are tears of joy. I said, you will not believe how many times I thought, God, is this even making a difference? I feel like I'm just bringing them over there, just every Thursday night at 7 o'clock to teach Bible study. And then at one time we were at the Qualcomm Stadium. There was an event and we were there. And I heard this call in the back of my head, Sister Phoebe, and I saw 3 guys stood up. And they said, Gemini Bible study, remember us? And they came down and they hugged me and said, Pastor Phoebe, we want to let you know we're Christians too when we're attending a church in Mira Mesa. Amazing. Some of you right now will probably sow in tears. You're thinking, God, this is just so hard. I want to give up on this marriage. I want to give up on this career. God, I want to give up on this walk with you. It's just so difficult. Don't stop. Don't stop. Be patient. Keep going. Tell the person sitting next to you, don't stop. Keep going. And the last principle is this. The best time to plant is when? When? Come on, you guys. When is the best time to plant? Tell the person sitting next to you now. You sound like cats. Now. The best time to plant is now. You don't wait for better time. Can I get a witness? Some of you are, don't worry, Pastor Phoebe, when I retire, I will be there when I retire. Here's the point. What if you don't make it to retirement? I've done so many funerals this past October. It is so heartbreaking. You know, yesterday it was just, I told Max, man, I feel like being bipolar here and schizophrenic because in the morning I was doing a funeral. We did a committal in Glen Abbey. And then in the afternoon I had to go. Someone was getting engaged. So I went from crying to like, congratulations. And by the time the day is over, I was dead tired. I told Max, this play of emotion is just wearing me down. In the morning, I was crying about getting buried. And then in the afternoon, I was like, congratulations. But you know what? The best time to serve and the best time to plant is now. Do not wait for perfect situations. Can I get a witness? Here's what Ecclesiastes 11:4 says. Read it with me. Those who wait for perfect weather will never plant a seed. And those who look at every cloud will never reap a harvest. Can I say this? Perfection paralyzes potential. Perfection paralyzes potential. If you are waiting for perfect conditions, it is not going to happen. How many of you are saying this? When life slows down, I have bad news for you. Life is not going to slow down. If you're waiting for the slowing down of life, it's not going to happen. In 2 weeks, we're going to have this daring faith offering that we're going to do. And what we're doing is we're going to build a worship arts center. And we're praying, God, we're going to take the step of faith. We're going to plant the seed. And we're going to let you see that seed grow. Max and I live this principle. I have seen it from my parents, and I have seen it in our life, that you will reap abundantly as you honor God in your life when you follow His laws. It is not a lose-lose situation. God will never ask you to do anything by yourself. When He tells you to do something, never, He will always be with you, and He will do it with you. It's one of the things that I prayed for when God gave me the opportunity to serve this church. I said, God, I am not going to do this on my own. And God, I never called you to do it on your own anyways. I'm going to be with you all the way. Are you going to do anything about this message tonight? You know what? Because God brought you here. Maybe some of you are in that point where, God, I'm giving up on my dreams. I'm giving up on my marriage. I'm giving up on all this. God brought you here and saying, you know what, honey, you need to plant the seed. Child, you need to plant the seed. Whatever you need in life, plant it and believe. Whatever you need more, you need to give it away. How many of you complain of not having enough time? I had a lady who was a nurse, and she said, Pastor Phoebe, you know, I'm always tired. I'm sorry, I said, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You do your part in other ways, but he said there was always this longing in her heart. She said, I always watch people volunteer in events, and they're so full of energy, and they're so full of joy. And here I am. I always say, I don't have time, and I really don't have time. And it seems like I'm always tired, and I'm always part of the event, but I'm not part of the action. And she said, I did an experiment. And she said, in the fall campaign, in the fall event that we have, when we have the Harvest Festival here, she said, I decided to step out in faith and say, God, I'm gonna give my time. I don't care if I don't have time. I'm going to give my time. And you know what? She gave her time. And when that Sunday evening, because the event was going to be Monday. And so Sunday evening, this place was just beaming with people, volunteers, getting the whole place ready for the community. We were outside. And with tears in her eyes, she told me, Pastor Phoebe, it works. I'm like, what works? Whatever you give to God, He gives you back in return. And he said, remember, I complain about not having time to help. Remember, I always tell you, I'm always apologizing because I never have time to help because I was always tired. Did you know that since last week, I volunteered and I helped? And it's Sunday evening, and I have so much energy, I cannot wait for Monday. And she just smiled and said, would you tell people, Pastor Phoebe, it works? So let me ask you this. What is it in your life that you need? Do you need more love? You need more kindness? You need more appreciation? You need more value? You need praise? How about if I challenge you to give that away? Whatever you need, give it away. Would you bow your heads with me, please? Would you pray this prayer quietly, just where you are right now? Say this, Dear God, thank you for creating the universe on universal laws. You have said that no one makes a fool of you, that whatever a person plants, he will harvest. And Lord, I realize I can use that negatively or positively in my life. So please help me to practice these 12 laws of the harvest. Help me to plant good seeds in abundance in every area of my life, God. And I think we all need to pray this prayer. Father, help me to be patient and realize that I reap in a season different than the one I sow in. But it is inevitable. The fruit will come. So help me to remember that I always reap more than I sow, God. That I can increase my harvest by planting more seeds. That the more seed I plant, the more you will give me. Help me not to live by my feelings, Father, but to live by faith. And God, please help me realize that the best time to plant is right now. If you have never opened your heart to Jesus Christ, you might be religious, or maybe you were there at one point, but you missed it. Pray this prayer quietly, just where you are. Say this. Say, Jesus Christ, come into my life and make me the person you want me to be, God, because I can't do it on my own. Some of you might need to say this: God, I believe in you. And I was there at one point. But right now in my life, I'll say this: I've lost my path and I've lost my way. And God, right now I'm sitting in the sidelines. But I want to go back to you, Lord. I want to get back on the right path. And I really want to know you now and love you and trust you. I want to see you, God, with my eyes of faith and trust you with my heart. Some of you might need to pray this in your heart. If you're sitting by your spouse, can I ask you to join hands with him this morning? Say this in your heart. Say, Lord, help our marriage to grow beautiful. Help our marriage to be strong, God. And help us to plant the necessary seeds so that it will continue to grow healthy. Help us to plant seeds of love and faith and joy and appreciation and kindness and respect. Lord Jesus, help our marriage to be an awesome example to our children. Some of you might need to pray this. Say, God, I used to have a dream, but life has beaten me so hard that I gave up on it. I've stopped daring and I've stopped dreaming. Would you please give me the courage to revisit that dream and believe in faith, God, that it was you who placed that dream in my life, and help me to take the necessary steps of faith to see that dream come to life. Father, each of us face the kind of lives we're going to live. Help us to realize that we're leaving a legacy for future generation. That God, everything that we do has an impact on people, whether we realize it or not. For those of us who are parents, remind us that every word, every action, every decision, every choice we make, God, impacts our children. And just as we've been influenced, God, by good and bad in our past, that our lives will make it harder or easier for somebody else. I thank you for the people who have sacrificed and lived in faith and planted in this church for 37 years, God. I thank you for those who have the faith to do so in the future. And I thank you in advance for the answer to all our prayers. And God, in faith, as a church family, we'd like to say thank you for that worship art center that you're going to birth in this facility. God. We thank you, God. We give you honor and we give you glory. In Jesus' name. Shall we all stand?